Welcome to the multi-tiered system of supports and social and emotional learning session. My name is Tony Rader and I work in the Department of Professional Learning.
Please take a few moments to review the learning objectives for this session. Here are the working agreements. Please take a few moments to review them. Think about which agreement you plan to focus on during this session. In this activity, you will have an opportunity to get to know your colleagues. After I finish giving the instructions, form groups of 7 people. Each person in your group will need to choose one of the colors on this slide. After each person in your group picks a color, find your color on the slide, and then answer the question that corresponds to your color. Please make sure that each person takes a turn. You may have heard different terms: MTSS, PBIS, RTI. They all refer to a systematic way for us to support students' academic and behavioral needs. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered System of Supports, and it refers to the framework in which academic and behavioral resources and services are given based upon student needs.
MTSS delivers intervention and instruction at different levels of intensity. Tier 1 intervention is delivered to all students. At least 80% of students' needs are met through Tier 1 intervention, and that is at the lowest level of intensity. Tier 2 interventions are at a higher level of intensity. 10 to 15% of students receive Tier 2 supports in small group settings. Tier 3 is delivered to 3 to 5% of students at the highest level of intensity. Tier 3 supports are delivered to individual students.
The trees on this slide represent Washoe County School District's priorities. The definition for social and emotional learning is located under the trees to illustrate that social and emotional learning is foundational for all of the priorities. It helps educators provide a richer experience for students and teachers. Let's take a few moments to look at the definition for social and emotional learning. Please read the definition to yourself and notice any words or phrases that are especially meaningful to you. Here are some things you may have noticed. Social and emotional learning is a process, not a program. Why are both adults and students included in this definition? Think about your experience of being here today. What knowledge and skills do you need in order to participate in this session? It is evident that learning social and emotional learning skills is a lifelong process. Positive behavioral interventions and supports is a mindset, a philosophical way to approach behavior. Staff members give verbal reinforcement to students. This can shape appropriate behavior and increase self-esteem. Students can earn points, bucks, and other incentives, and then redeem them at the school store. Please turn to the article, Assuming the Best. Let's pretend that each of you has $1 to invest for this activity. As you read the article, Assuming the Best, identify the phrases and sentences that resonate the most to you. Notice that the article is divided into 3 sections. After you read the article, decide how you want to invest your dollar. For example, if Section 1 resonated the most to you, you can invest more of your dollar in that section. You should invest the least amount of your money in the section that resonated the least to you. Once you have finished reading and investing in the article, your facilitator will identify 3 areas of the room. 1 area of the room for Section 1, 1 area for Section 2, and 1 area for Section 3. The facilitator will then ask you to move to the designated area of the room for the section you invested the most money in. Once you arrive in the designated area, share your thoughts about the corresponding section of the article with the other participants in your group. If the group is large, you can break up into smaller groups within that area. This slide shows some of the keys for developing a positive classroom and school culture. Behavioral expectations must be consistent and predictable, and all students need to be recognized when they exhibit positive behavior. Sometimes there are inconsistent expectations between staff members. For example, when a student comes to class without a pencil, one teacher gives the student a pencil, but the other teacher sends the student to the office instead. Common language helps all students understand the school-wide expectations. Studies show that most students receive little recognition for positive behavior, yet we know that it has a positive effect on student learning. Here are 5 things that you can do to apply the principles of positive behavioral interventions and supports. You will learn more about these components in this session.
Each school develops a PBIS matrix. It provides information to students about the school-wide expectations for behavior. It provides different expectations around the various areas of the school. It is important to use this matrix to help reinforce behavior and to reteach behavior for students.
When we look at negative behavior for what it is communicating, we can respond proactively. Dr. Laura Riffle, the behavior doctor, recently spoke at a conference in Reno. She asked us to reflect on the ways that educators traditionally handle problem behaviors. We usually tell students why their behavior is inappropriate or punish the students. Dr. Riffle encouraged us to try to understand why inappropriate behavior happens in the first place. Dr. Riffle recently gave a keynote address called 10 Things You Should Know. In the next few slides, I will share her ideas with you. Number 1, acceptable behavior is the result of exposure to necessary learning conditions. If a behavior is not in a student's repertoire, a student will be unable to invoke acceptable behavior, regardless of the learning conditions.
So the first rule about behavior is learned and it serves a specific purpose. I know you guys have heard that in your Psych 101 class a zillion years ago, but let me tell you how this applies to you. 9-week-old babies, 9 weeks old, know how to fake a cough to get adult attention. If they have figured that out at 9 weeks, imagine what they figured out by the time they get to kindergarten. Imagine what they figured out by the time they get to high school and everywhere in between. Kids see us as vending machines. They know exactly what button to push to get us to deliver the candy bar that they're going for. And their candy bar isn't chocolate. Their candy bar is what they're trying to get or what they're trying to get out of, and I'll teach you what those are in a little bit.
Number 2, there is always a place or a situation that influences the behavior.
All right, the second rule about behavior is related to the context within which it occurs. This is the one that gets us into trouble at parent-teacher conferences. How many of you have sat in a parent-teacher conference describing a behavior that is occurring at school, and the parents look at you incredulously, and they go, they don't do that at home? How many of you have heard that? All right, now, the parents aren't here. How many of you thought the parents were lying? You can be honest. Guess what? They very well might not have been. Let me ask you this question. How many of you at home have your significant other and your personal children raise their hand and ask permission to speak? Although you're tempted. How many of you at home have your significant other and personal children raise their hand and ask permission to go to the restroom? Ask permission to move about the house? Permission to leave the room, ma'am? Do we do that? Yeah. We dream about it, but we don't really do it. Yes. How many of you at home have 25 other children running around or more? Not too many. You'd have a television show if you did that, right? And then you wouldn't be teaching. You'd be making much more money. All right. How many of you at home sit on these lovely hard metal chairs for 7 or 8 hours? Or plastic chairs? Or wooden chairs? Anybody do that? How many of you at home have fluorescent lights everywhere you go? These are two things that we know exacerbate behavior: an uncomfortable tush and flickering lights that make noise above us. And yet it's what we put in schools in America because it's what we can afford to do when we have to buy 100,000 of them or more.
Number 3, for every year that a behavior has been in place, you may need to spend up to 1 month teaching positive behaviors.
I love this one. This one scares a lot of people. For every year that a behavior's been in place, we need to consider 1 month of consistent, appropriate intervention for us to see a change. Now, that's a rule of thumb, not a hard and fast rule. But the reason I throw it in as a rule is because so often as a behaviorist, I get called in to help with kids. And one of my specialties, and the people who came to my autism seminar know that autism is very near and dear to my heart. My husband and I chose to live with an adult who had autism, bipolar condition, obsessive-compulsive disorder, intellectual disabilities, and mild cerebral palsy. His name was Jay. I spend a lot of time in schools because I've been called in to help with kids who have autism. And I will watch this poor kid. It doesn't matter whether they're elementary, middle school, or high school, but they're having a terrible time with transitions. And I watch all morning, and I have not seen a visual schedule. So during the lunch break, I will ask the adults in the room, does the child have a visual schedule? And they'll shake their head, yes. And I'll say, can I see it? And they take me over to the wall where they have a typed piece of paper that says from 8:30 to 9 o'clock we do this. From 9 o'clock to 9:30 we do this. From 9:30 to 10 o'clock we do this. So I always turn around and play dumb, and I go, oh, I didn't know they knew how to read. I have to think differently about this. And they'll always go, oh, no, they don't read. Then this is a visual schedule for your adults in the room, which we need them. But it's not a visual schedule for the student that I'm there to see. We have tons of research to prove that visual schedules are extremely helpful for children who have autism. And so I carry with me when I go to visit a portable printer. I have learned that schools sometimes don't have paper. I carry a portable laminator because schools never have laminating film after January. I carry Velcro. I carry the Boardmaker program in case that's a level that the child is at so that I can make whatever is the appropriate visual schedule. I will model how to use it. The child will be using it beautifully by the time I leave that day. I come back a month later. Unfortunately, that's how long it takes before I cycle back around to the schools that I visit. I come back a month later, and I always say, now, if you have any problems, you email me. I will help you through email. I never get an email. I come back a month later, the kid's still crawling under the table. And I'm like, how's the visual schedule going? And they go, oh, it didn't work. And I'm like, how long did you try it? We tried it for 3 days.
Number 4, by praising students when they show positive behavior, we can adjust 80% of the problem behavior. This strategy is known as third-person prompting. For example, if Sandra is off task and John is on task, we may say, "Thank you, John, for staying focused and working hard on your math assignment," in hopes that Sandra will hear this and will choose to adjust her behavior.
Rule number 4. We can improve behavior by 80% just by pointing out what one person is doing correctly. Shores, Gunter, and Jack taught us this years and years ago. We use it in PBIS all the time. We know that behavior-specific praise works. I love to use it on adults. I have 3 classes that I teach in Oklahoma. One's in Oklahoma City, one's in Lawton, and one's in Tulsa. I won't say which one, but one of my 3 cities, the adults that come to my class are very messy. When the training is over, they leave their stuff on the tables like I'm their mom and it's my job to clean their stuff up. These are grown adults, and they leave their Starbucks cups, their cookie wrappers, their crumbs, all of that. And I thought, you know, after about the second time, I realized this is a trend with that group. And so I waited for one adult to take her stuff over to the trash can. I said, "Oh, thank you so much for putting your things in the trash. I really appreciate that." That's all I said. I turned around, got busy, picking up all my stuff that I had all over the room, and all my little show and tell things that I bring. Turned back around, guess what? Every table was cleared off. Works with adults.
Educators who have frequent positive interactions with students generally experience more positive student behavior than those who rely on punishment.
You walk into an elementary school and you say, "Oh my gosh, you have got the best posture I've ever seen." And what happens? Instantly, every kid's shoulders go back and they look like little robots. I have so much fun with that. Now, the other day, I was last month, I was in Torrington Middle School in Wyoming. And after lunch, the middle school kids are allowed to go outside to the holding cell. They have like a concrete pad out there. It's got a fence around it so they can't escape, but they're allowed to go out there and get some fresh air. And most of the kids, actually all the kids, went out there after the lunch period, but one little boy stayed back, and he was like straightening all the chairs, you know, like this, and going around, making sure all the tables looked nice. And you know, I whispered to the principal who was taking me around, I said, "Does he have OCD or, you know?" He goes, "No, I think he just decided to do that." I go, "Does he think he's getting something for it?" And he goes, "No, he's just the kind of kid that would do that." So I called him over and I said, I had a gotcha in my pocket, and a gotcha is a little slip of paper that we use to give behavior-specific praise. And the reason that we ever invented gotchas in the first place really had nothing to do with the token economy. It had to do with reminding the adults to give behavior-specific praise. If there's not a piece of paper and kids reminding you, you will forget. We'll be really good in August, but after August, it's like, ding, ding, you know, good stuff happens and we don't label it. So I wrote out a gotcha. Well, then the bell rang, and all the kids are walking by while I'm writing out this gotcha. And, of course, necks are craning, like, is he in trouble? What are they filling out over there? And, you know, I saw him after I gave it to him and complimented him and said, you know, "I love the way you're being helpful for the custodian by pushing in all the chairs and making sure that the cafeteria looked nice and everything." I saw the kids come at him, "What you get?" You know, and he's, like, showing it to everybody. Principal called me the next day. I was over at the elementary school, and he goes, "You wouldn't believe it." He said, "There's 8 kids in the cafeteria pushing in chairs." And it wasn't that they were doing it to get the gotcha. They just now realized all of a sudden this is something that's of value. And sometimes that's what we have to do, is label that appropriate behavior, because then the kids know what's of value. What they see out in the World Wide Web, what they see on television, what they hear in the music that they listen to, is not of our value. And it's not what we want to see replicated at school. So really, truthfully, what we're doing, the reason we're giving behavior-specific praise is to teach kids what's of value. It's valuable to us, it's valuable to the world if you hold the door open for others. This month in Wyoming, I'm going around to all the stores and I'm giving them posters that say, we like Torrington students who show respect, and they're getting gotchas to give out to kids because my message to kids is, this isn't just a school thing. This isn't just a home thing, because we've done the home training. This is something that's important and of value out in the community. And so they're going to have little gotchas to give to kids when kids come to the store and exhibited excellent behavior inside the store. And it makes a world of difference with the kids internalizing this. Folks, we know this. We've been taught this. But the truth is, here's how often we use this. I think before I forward the slide, I'll just ask you. Terry Scott took doc students and sat across schools across the United States. He's at the University of Louisville, but this is not just in Kentucky. He went all over. They sat in schools and they measured how often do kids hear behavior-specific praise and how often do they hear negatives. So this would count as a behavior-specific praise. Thank you for picking up trash, or thank you for picking up trash. That's respectful of the environment. What doesn't count is saying good job, because good job doesn't really mean anything. You know, it just doesn't. It doesn't really tell the kids what they were doing that was appropriate. Now, for the negatives, teachers were not walking around saying things like you're uglier than the bottom of a toadstool. They were walking around saying things like stop that, quit that, don't do that. Those things. That counted as a negative. So in 1 hour's time, across the United States, how many positives do you think they saw per hour? It was more than one. And not directed just at one kid, just floating in. What could they hear sitting in key locations? It was 3. 3 positives in the hour. Now, how many negatives? How many don't stop, quit, no's did they hear? More than 30. 30 would have been good. 45. Now, that's not one person giving 45. That's what's floating in an hour, but that's what kids are hearing. 45, don't stop, quits, and no's. I got called into a preschool in New York, so it's about 80% of the time. We use it less than 10% of the time. It improves behavior by 80%.
Number 6. In this clip, you will hear Dr. Riffle share an idea for working with non-compliant students.
Rule number 6, when you have a non-compliant child, research says, and I have tested this, offering them equal choices, they've got to be equal. About 95% of the time, if you offer equal choices, the child will choose one of your 2 equal choices. Now, I give a test in my Applied Behavior Analysis course, and I think it's a pretty easy question. Give me an example. This is for the final. After you've listened to me all semester, this is for the final, and I say, give me an example of an equal choice. And every year, somebody writes, do this or lose recess. Do this or go to the office. That is not an equal choice. So let me give you an example. I am a 7th grade math teacher. She's in my class. She doesn't like algebra. She's told me this before. As a matter of fact, I know today when I introduce the assignment, she's going to maybe raise her hand or just blurt out, and she's going to say, my mother is 42 years old, and she says she's never used algebra once in her life. And I'm going to marry Justin Bieber when I grow up, so I'm going to be really rich, so I can pay somebody to do my math for me. I know this. So the night before, I put a proactive plan in place. I take the 25 problems that I'm given to the whole rest of the class. I take those 25 problems, I feed them into my computer, I do an A to Z sort and move those 25 problems. It's the same 25 problems, but they're in a different order. I put a different little cute icon. You know how there's always some kind of little icon on it? I put a different icon on it. It looks different. So the next morning, I come to school, and I'm feeling pretty good. I got a plan, and it's always good to have a plan. So it's time for the assignment. Now, this young lady right here, she has low self-esteem, And one of the things that I know that really helps, we've done this with over 1,000 kids in Kansas and Oklahoma, the 4 P's for raising self-esteem. So one of the P's is public relations, making her look good in front of the rest of the class. So I hold one paper out and my special one. I hand her the rest and I say, "Hun, could you pass these out to everyone in the class?" So I just gave her an important job. She looks good in front of, man, Miss Riffle picked her to pass out the papers. And most of the kids want to do that because that means getting up out of your seat and walking around, seeing what everybody's doing, having little side conversations. So get busy, pass out papers. I'm kidding, you don't have to get up. All right, so now I've got this young lady. I have the paper she's passing out and my special one. Now, what I see people typically do is they come right up, "You're going to do this math paper right now, and I mean it," you know, in like the veins. I mean, I've honestly been in rooms, and they know I'm there to watch them, and the veins are sticking. You'd think they'd be nice while I'm there, you know, and then after I leave, the veins would come out. Don't get in front of a kid, because then those are fighting words. So I walk past her. I shoot her a smile as I walk past. She thinks, "Ha, ha, ha, can't wait till I get my paper. I'm going to say it." I do a U-turn. I come in from the rear. I lean over on her right side because I want to speak into her right ear. I will tell you why in a second. I'm going to lean over and I'm going to say, "Hun, you can do this math paper or this math paper. Doesn't matter to me. Can't wait to see what you decide. Use expected compliance and walk away. Make no more eye contact." What we found is over 98% of the time the kid will choose one of those 2 choices, and that's way better odds than you've had before. Now, the reason the right ear, and I promise I won't mess up your hair. I usually pick a bald person to do this, but I didn't this time. So when information comes in the right ear, it gets processed on the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain is the language processing side of the brain. The child is more conducive to compliance. When information comes in the left ear, it gets processed on the right side of the brain, which is the creative side of the brain. And I can think of 10 other things I would rather do than your stinking math paper, right? Now, when you come at them from the front, we don't know which side it gets processed on. Very important.
Number 7, every problem behavior has a motivator driving it. The student is either trying to gain something or trying to escape something by behaving inappropriately.
All behavior falls into 2 categories. Kids are either trying to get something or they're trying to get out of something. What I typically hear are 2 things. People say they're trying to get out of work or they're trying to get attention. And that's all anybody focuses on. So let me show you what kids are really trying to get. The things that kids are trying to get, first and foremost, is attention. But remember why kids want attention? Because we've decreased face time by 63%. When we give it to them on the front side, they won't take it on the back side. The second thing that kids are trying to get is access to preferred items. So that's the function behind stealing, but it's also the function behind the kid that you gave 15 minutes on the computer, and now it's time to stop the computer and go do the non-preferred activity, and the kid chucks a wobbly because they want the preferred activity, not the non-preferred activity. So that's the function behind that. We have to understand the function before we can put an intervention in place. The third thing that kids are trying to get is access to sensory. As a matter of fact, they don't want it, they need it.
Number 8, students may display negative behaviors when they are attempting to escape these things. For example, a student may think, "If I am disruptive, I will be sent to the office, and that will keep me from having to do work."
The things that kids are trying to get out of, work. They're no different than us. They can't buy lottery tickets and dream about it, so they figure out. I don't know if there's any kids in here. If I say the F word, it's instantaneous. I typically get sent to the office. If I say the D word, depending on what teacher I say it to, there's a 30-second time delay, or they just ignore it. Kids figure out, what will each adult do? They test it. Kids are brilliant, even the good ones. I used to get out of homework every Friday. There were 5 of us. We could get Mr. Wren talking about sports, whatever game was coming up that weekend, and we could talk the whole 50-minute period of class. and he would never get to the lesson, so we never had homework on Friday. At the end of the year, we were like 34 days behind everybody else, but we knew how to work him. The second thing that kids are trying to escape is attention. Usually it's attention from us because we're the ones asking them to do. What are we asking them to do? Work. You guys are slumping on me. Those carbs, they're kicking in. If they're trying to escape other peers, then there's probably bullying going on, and we need to pay attention to that. On PBIS.org, we have a free bully proofing program called Bully Proofing Your PBIS School. There's the Alveus program, there's the Ophelia project. Those are all free tools. So if you don't have a bullying program in place in your school, a bully proofing program, not bullying, but bully proofing, please check one of those out and get a team going. Sometimes kids have behavior because they're in pain. So for some of our kids, that's emotional pain, and they don't wear shirts that say, Mom and Dad had a huge fight last night, I'm not sure my dad's coming home tonight, or the landlord came and told us we have to move out because we haven't paid our rent for 3 months. All we see is they break a pencil and tell us what we can do with their spelling assignment or whatever it is we're asking them to do, and we think it's a spelling problem, but really it's a, I can't deal with one more thing because I am in emotional pain about what's going on. And at the secondary level, even at some elementary levels, it's my boyfriend broke up with me, my girlfriend broke up with me, and they don't realize there's 17 more coming. And so, you know, they think it's the end of the world, at least 17. I believe that's the average. All right, some of our kids are nonverbal. They have behavior because they're in physical pain, and they don't have the words to tell us they're in physical pain. I've worked with kids that had behavior because they had a sinus infection, but they didn't have the words to tell us they had a sinus infection. Anyone that's ever raised a teething infant knows all about this. We get bit on the shoulder because our shoulder looked like just the right texture to signal to us that they are in pain. So sometimes our kids will have behavior because they're in physical pain. And the last one up there is sometimes kids have behavior because too much sensory is coming in. A kid who has hyperacusis would be leaving this room because of the noise of people walking around, those machines running over there, the humming of the lights. It's a very high frequency hum. I can hear it. Some kids would be able to hear the ticking of that clock over there. It's all coming in at the same volume as the teacher's voice, and I can only take so much of all of that. You know, people moving, scratching their skin, moving their feet, moving chairs. It just becomes too much.
Number 9, good behavior begins with you. To change a student's behavior, we have to change our own behavior first.
Whenever a child has a behavior, whether it is the most wonderful behavior in the whole wide world that you want to see again and again and again, or a behavior that you would like to target for change, your reaction to that behavior determines whether you see it again or not. And folks, that's power. We have the power to do that.
Number 10, reinforcement is any event that follows a behavior. It falls into 2 categories: positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Verbal reinforcement is positive, and it can be used to shape appropriate behavior. Students may also earn tokens to be redeemed at the school store. Negative reinforcements include deduction of points and loss of privileges. This slide shows several different types of positive reinforcement. Students may consider some types of positive reinforcement to be more valuable than others. Please take a moment to consider the type of reinforcements that your students tend to value the most. When you give positive reinforcement, be sure to deliver it with enthusiasm and vary the types of positive reinforcements that you give to students. Why should you give positive reinforcement to students? It motivates them to do what they are capable of doing, and it increases the likelihood that positive behaviors will be repeated. Praise is one of the most effective types of positive reinforcement that you can use. Here are some tips for praising students effectively. Give praise immediately. The sooner the positive reinforcement is given in relation to a behavior, the more likely the student will continue or repeat that behavior. Vary the statements given as praise. When students hear the same statement of praise repeated over and over, it may lose its value. Describe the positive behavior while giving praise. The comments should focus on what the student did right and be stated in positive language. For example, "That was a wonderful paragraph you wrote because you chose strong verbs." Provide information to students about the value of their accomplishments. For example, "That was a kind thing to do when you helped Mrs. Fisher carry those bags. I know it made her feel more welcome in our school." Finally, attribute success to effort. This implies that similar successes can be expected in the future. For example, "Your studying really paid off. That's a good score on your math test. It shows you really nailed problem solving."
Each group of students has a different culture. Younger students, for example, may enjoy receiving praise that their peers can hear. Older students may enjoy receiving praise privately, for example, giving them a note or simply making a gesture. Some students, individual students, have a history of receiving negative comments when they receive praise. That's called sandwiched praise. Sandwich praise is when you embed your praise within negative comments. So for example, if I say to a student, "You did a great job on that assignment, but you should have turned it in earlier," that makes the students think that whenever they receive praise, something negative might happen. Other students may have a low opinion of themselves and may reject praise as a result. One thing you can do to help these students is to drop praise. To do this, you simply walk by a student and drop the praise and then walk away before the student has a chance to comment. If the student does make a negative comment, all you need to do is say, "That's the way I see it."
Token economies can be key for creating a positive learning environment, and they can increase the frequency of positive behaviors. In a token economy, staff members award individual students or groups of students with a token when they follow rules or perform specific behaviors. Tokens may be points on a card, check marks, stickers, or paper awards with an assigned value. Students can accumulate tokens and then exchange them at a later time for something of value to them, such as food, objects, activities, or special privileges. Students initially learn the behavior reinforcement relationship most effectively when the reinforcement is delivered consistently every time the behavior occurs. Try to deliver the reinforcement immediately after the behavior occurs. If this is not physically possible, then immediately let the student know that he has displayed the desired behavior and positive reinforcement will be forthcoming. If a student can currently only stay on task for 2 minutes, start by giving her positive reinforcement after 2 minutes. Then ask her to progressively increase the amount of time on task and give positive reinforcement accordingly. To sustain behavior without having to deliver reinforcement every time, use a fixed ratio of delivering reinforcements to establish the new behavior, and then a variable ratio to encourage durability of behavior. With a fixed ratio, you will need to deliver the reinforcement every second, third, or fourth time the desired behavior occurs. With a variable ratio, you will deliver the reinforcement on an average of every fourth time the desired behavior occurs, sometimes after the third time, sometimes after the fifth. Try to give positive reinforcement at least 4 times for every 1 correction. For example, if students physically strike other people twice a day on average, aim to give them positive reinforcement for keeping their hands to themselves 8 times per day. This may mean giving positive reinforcement every hour that they do not show the problem behavior. You can use something as simple as an index card and keep track of negative comments compared to positive comments. Every time you give students a positive comment, make a tear on the long side. Every time you reprimand students, make a tear on the short side. The first day, you will be surprised at how few positives you give. You will want to work to increase the numbers each day. Love and Logic is a philosophy founded in 1977 by Jim Fay and Foster W. Klein. Fay and Klein teach that when students feel respected and appreciated by their teachers, they are motivated to learn. Successful educators focus most of their energy on simple tools for preventing misbehavior, such as proximity or shaking your head, rather than trying to provide consequences for every problem behavior. When negative consequences are necessary, effective educators deliver logical consequences. On the screen, you can see some examples of logical and illogical consequences. Ripping up a student's work when she is caught cheating is an illogical consequence that humiliates the student. Yelling or having the microphone on when correcting a student puts the student on blast. After I have provided the instructions for this activity, the video will stop. Here are the instructions. Take 2 minutes to skim the Love and Logic handout. Then, turn to the Give One, Get One page in your handout. Think of a direction or redirection that you might give to your students. Using the Love and Logic approach, determine how you could rephrase your direction. For example, take out all of the negatives. For example, don't, stop, no, and so on. Write your idea in a square on your grid. Find a partner and exchange ideas. Then find a new partner and exchange ideas. Continue until you fill up your grid. Now, take just a moment to turn to the Love and Logic handout. Here are some tools to add to your toolbox that will result in optimal conditions for learning. Consistently implementing these ideas can also lead to improvements in teacher-to-student and student-to-student relations. Welcoming rituals can be used to set the climate and culture of the classroom. Even a few minutes of beginning of class period routines each day sets a tone of connectedness and safety. Welcoming rituals may also involve students welcoming each other, too. Brain breaks can help students to regulate their energy. You can read the room to see if students need their energy calmed or boosted. Leading students in a quick activity involving physical movement keeps students engaged in learning. Connecting activities create opportunities for students to share their thoughts and increase their understanding of the thoughts and feelings of others. Optimistic closure activities are intended to anchor the good feelings students have about what they learned and experienced at school. They help students end the day on a positive note, so they look forward to returning to school the next day. One study found that if teachers greeted their students at the door, it increased on-task behavior from 45% to 72%.
So we want to use their name in a positive way. That's extremely important. Behrman and Kopp, it's really old research, and there's newer research, but I just want to, we've known this for a really long time. Behrman and Kopp found that if one adult, other than a child's main parent, their parent, or their main teacher knows and uses their name in a positive way, that kid is less likely to drop out of school. When I train bus drivers, I tell them, do you realize the power that you have? Just saying good morning to a kid and saying, I'm glad to see you today, can stop that kid from dropping out of school. We want to get our dropout rate to 0. We don't want any kids dropping out. Ann Corvin says that to build a relationship with a child, we need to talk to them, we need to touch them, and we need to make eye contact with them. And I like the saying Josh Shipp said, every child is one caring adult away from being a success. And when we stand at the door greeting our kids, we can help those kids be a success, we can help them not drop out of school, and we also can help ourselves decrease disruptions in the classroom.
After I provide the instructions for this activity, the video will stop. Here are the instructions. Turn to the Welcoming and Closing Activities page in your packet. As you read, put a check mark next to the ideas you have already used. Put an exclamation mark next to any ideas that you want to try using with students. After you finish reading and making notes, share your thoughts with the person to your left. It is important to have students make social connections with one another. To do this, they need to discuss the concepts they are learning about in class. After students have learned something new, ask them to stop and think. Then ask students to take a couple of minutes to share their ideas with a partner. When students discuss their ideas with one another, always encourage them to use accountable talk strategies. This means that students don't just say, I agree or I disagree, but they also explain their reasoning. Brain breaks can be used to help students regulate their energy. GoNoodle offers some resources. You can find GoNoodle videos at gonoodle.com and on YouTube. These videos can be used as brain breaks. Time to move around and get the blood flowing. The facilitator will click on the link in the box and we will watch a video introduction to GoNoodle. As you read this list of things that you can do to support PBIS and SEL, think of a couple of strategies that you plan to use with your students.
In just a moment, you're going to participate in an activity. This activity is one that you can use with your students to help them connect with one another. You can use the activity as an opening or as a closing activity. When you start the activity, please turn to the person sitting to your right and tell them why you were happy to learn with them today. Say, I am thankful to have spent this day with you because, and then finish the sentence.